As I drove away from everything I had known and loved, I contemplated the somewhat controversial circumstances that brought me to this journey to Alaska. What had I done? To whom did I do it? All those thoughts bounced around my somewhat empty noggin, and I thought, screw it, I'll have a little bit of fun.
Hey, this is Geoff, and I'm on my great Alaskan adventure. Fabulous! Hey, just went by Custer's Last Stand, Little Bighorn. Oh shit. Makes me want to go drink some Budweiser with my cousins in it. It's always good to have a casino next to your battlefield too. Day 2 of Geoff's great Alaskan adventure. Just pulling into Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Idaho, Idaho. They had a white supremacist parade here once. White power! Fun for the whole family, unless baby mama is named Shaniqua, and then not so much. Oh no, you just didn't.
I continued down the road, eating beef jerky, planning my visit to the Palm Springs of Washington.
So I just pulled into Yakima, and the closer I got to town, the more plans I started to have. So we're gonna see what sort of tomfoolery shenanigans I can get into.
There he is.
How's it going, my brother?
My Yakima friends gathered to bid me a fine welcome, and it was great to see everyone. I also realized how happy it makes me when people say my name.
Well, hello.
It's Geoff Oliver! Hi, Geoff Oliver!
Hi, Jen.
Hi, Jeffrey.
What do you think of the bald head?
Shiny.
It's the hard knock life. It's most juicy.
I attended a concert of the daughter of some friends at a local substance abuse treatment center, and I believe I was flashing back a bit at what I saw during the show. The next day, I drove around the Yakima Valley, saw Mount Adams, and reflected on the 2 times I had made it to the 12,281-foot summit. As I drove around more, I said to myself, oh my heavens, I'm sure glad I'm not a migrant worker, because I'm not too fond of manual labor, and I don't really like apples that much anyway. But thank you, illegal immigrant, for picking them so I don't have to. You're a peach. That's a play on words. I met some more friends that evening, but I had been invited to a White Pass Ski Patrol party where I saw more old friends and caught up on who divorced who, speculated why they divorced, and all the other typical gossip while enjoying some barbecued oysters and the sunset over the Yakima Valley. The following morning, I had to leave all my Yakima friends to continue my journey to Alaska, but we enjoyed a final Saturday morning coffee at a little-known coffee chain. You may have heard of it.
So I just got off I-5 in Bellingham, so I'm going to go get in line to board the ferry for Alaska. I hope there's seamen down at the dock. I bet there's seamen all over the ferry. Seamen and ferries. Synonymous! I'm not gay. Not that there's anything wrong with that. You know it rhymes with dock, don't you? It looks pretty damn big. Holy crap. I'm very excited about this. Never ridden a ferry before like this big.
The ferry I was scheduled to leave on was the MV Ketchikan, named after an Alaskan glacier. I was told we were departing at 6 p.m., but I needed to be in line at 3 p.m. I didn't want to miss the boat, so I was at the port exceedingly early, 1 p.m. This gave me plenty of time to see sleeping hippies, who would later be boatmate hippies, and visit the town of Bellingham, Washington. As I walked around, I wondered what journeys these people were on, knowing that I would never see them again. I also thought the double-decker bus was interesting and wanted to drive it around. As always, something like that would make me cool. I made it back to the dock and found the police searching each vehicle with a bomb or drug-sniffing dog. Although I didn't have a bomb or drugs, it made me a bit nervous that Cujo would stop at my car and they would search it, causing me to miss my boat. A trio of cyclists pulled onto the dock with bike versions of the Sanford & Son truck and made me wonder what their story was. Vehicles pulling trailers were allowed onto the boat first, each having to back down the ramp into the belly of the boat. They all did well, meaning that all the drivers were men. I made my way onto the boat, found my cabin, and began exploring the ferry. This and all future references to the ferry are not intended as gay, but I giggle in my mind every time I say it, as you should too. I had my camera gear with me and I toted it around like I was a big shot director of photography, and I got some artsy-fartsy video. As the ferry pulled out, I felt a big relief. Relief that the next 3 days I'd be relaxing and sleeping on the ferry. Fellow ferry mates were out and about enjoying the views of the Pacific Ocean. I didn't expect the luxury of the Love Boat from 70s TV fame, but as I searched for Julie the cruise director, Isaac the bartender, Gopher the purser, and Captain Steubing, I realized the true utilitarian nature of this vessel harkened back to my days as a merchant marine sailing off the coast of Somalia. Actually, I wasn't a merchant marine, I just made that up. But the whitewashed Kennecott had a ruggedness to it that gave it the feel like climbing into a beefy SUV or a no-frills Jeep. It did, however, have all the creature comforts of a Greyhound bus, including chairs and windows. What more could a weary traveler ask for if the only purpose of the trip was to get from point A to point B? What the Kennecott lacked in luxury, it made up for in breathtaking views. A call came over the public announcement system that all passengers were to be in the forward observation lounge for a safety briefing. The lady giving the demonstrations would be considered the opposite of hot, dashing any hopes of seeing the Love Boat equivalent of Julie the cruise director. They asked for volunteers to don the life vest, and a helpful hippie from the crowd happily obliged. He was given a voucher for a free ice cream in the cafeteria, and it's my guess it was in his hippie DNA to volunteer to get the free food. Once the adult life vests were demonstrated, a little girl was selected to show the use of a child's life vest. After her demonstration, she didn't want to take it off and started crying and throwing a tantrum. Her comedic father said, "If you're going to be like that, let's go try it out," and threatened to throw the child overboard. Although borderline perceived child abuse, it made me laugh. The passenger cabins, or berths as they're called, were quite comfortable and roomy for those passengers who had jobs to make the money to pay for a cabin. The hippies, assumably without jobs or money, were banished to what I referred to as the hippie deck. This area is where they pitched their tents, bathed in patchouli oil, played hacky sack, not washed their hair, or did whatever hippies do, which is generally nothing. Other travelers were out enjoying the day, and I found the boat to be somewhat empty. Locating the hippies was easy, however, because they were all on the back of the boat. A somewhat self-prescribed equivalent of Rosa Parks having to sit in the back of the bus. And if I was unsure of their location, I simply looked for the smell. I caught up with the cyclists and found out firsthand what their story was.
Well, my name is Martina, and I'm cycling from Argentina to Alaska and Canada.
Martina said that she had left the southernmost point in Argentina 2.5 years ago and traveled more than 24,000 kilometers so far. Like a true American, I did the math in my head, and that's like 700 real miles. I also met her travel companion, Monica.
Hi, I'm Monica, I'm from Switzerland, and I'm cycling from Tierra del Fuego to Alaska. I started in December 2009.
As I meandered around the ferry, I met several people despite my intense shyness. Don was one of the characters who I talked to.
I'm Don Kelly. I'm from north central Wisconsin. Turns out I'm taking a voyage up the Inside Passage with a new friend, Geoff Oliver. You're going to meet so many like-minded people, and I know you are going to... I bet you'll never go back to the 48, lower 48.
After experiencing Don's precognition skills, an announcement was made that the car deck was open. This meant that anyone who brought a pet could let it out of the car and take a potty break. Car deck calls, as they were called, were 4 times a day, about every 6 hours. Owners had to walk their dogs inside a circle, which was reminiscent of the Westminster Dog Show, only the owners and the dogs weren't near as refined. There was also more dog shit. The Inside Passage is a coastal route for ocean-going vessels along a network of passages which weave through the islands on the Pacific coast of North America. The route extends from southeastern Alaska in the United States through western British Columbia and Canada to northwestern Washington state. Ships using the route can avoid some of the bad weather in the open ocean and may visit some of the many isolated communities along the route. The Inside Passage is heavily traveled by cruise ships, freighters, tugs with tows, fishing craft, and ships of the Alaska Marine Highway, BC Ferries, and Washington State Ferry systems. The term Inside Passage is also often used to refer to the ocean and islands around the passage itself. The Inside Passage is also sometimes referred to as the Inland Passage, which is in turn a reference to early explorers' quest to locate the Northwest Passage between the Pacific Ocean and the Atlantic Ocean. Ferries full of seamen often travel up and down and then back up the Inside Passage. Thank you, Wikipedia. The first stop along the way was Ketchikan, Alaska. I had done some research and found that prostitution had been outlawed here in 1954, but the Creek Street whores had been replaced with girls acting the part for tourists. I was looking forward to seeing the fake hookers, but was coerced by boatmates into visiting totem poles instead. The history of the totem poles was fascinating, with each pole telling a story. The guide was very knowledgeable on. Oh, blah blah blah, let's just fast forward a bit. They're just a bunch of totem poles, for crying out loud. I wanted to see some fake hookers, damn it. We only had a few hours to visit Ketchikan, so we made our way back to the Kennecott. I settled back on the boat and found a lost hippie playing the community guitar in the boat's lounge. I figured anyone who wants to play a communal guitar plays well. But not this hippie. We were to pull into Juneau at 6 a.m. the next morning, so I was able to enjoy some late evening views along the Inside Passage. The following morning, I had to pack up and get off the ferry. I had all day to explore Juneau, and since I had my vehicle, I decided to drive on all 40 miles of the road that Juneau had to offer. I went to the end of the only road, and it felt like I was in another world. I traveled back into town and remembered what a nerd once said when asked what the capital of Alaska was. He responded, "I don't know, Juneau?" From then on, I knew how to recognize a nerd, and judging from the cruise ship passengers in town, they had all uttered those words that day. The capital didn't have the telltale signs of any other capital I'd seen, with the dome and the flag. This looked like any other building except for the columns out front. I found a Mexican restaurant which served me a delicious Mexican breakfast, then I saw a gondola which went up to the top of Mount Roberts. On my way up, my Mexican breakfast decided my stomach was undesirable and wanted out. After setting my Mexican breakfast free, I got to see a bald eagle up close. Ironically, the bird which symbolizes freedom was captive behind bars. The weather was poor, so I headed back down Mount Roberts. The nerdy cruise passengers were everywhere, but I found a store that piqued my interest. I was disappointed because it wasn't what I thought it was. The next morning, I boarded another ferry bound for Haines, Alaska. This was a rather quick ride on the ferry, but I got to see some sea life and more breathtaking scenery. I knew I would be back on land again soon to begin my drive to Anchorage. The road to Canada was interesting but very desolate. At the Haines Highway summit, I myself felt like a nerd because the landscape reminded me of the ice planet Hoth in The Empire Strikes Back. But further up the road, I found towering mountains in the Wrangell St. Elias National Park. I believe this is Mount St. Elias, which is situated on the border of the Wrangell St. Elias National Park and Canada's Kluane National Park and Reserve. At 18,074 feet, Mount St. Elias is the second highest mountain in both Canada and the United States. In total, 9 of the 16 highest peaks on U.S. soil are located in this park. Thanks again, Wikipedia. I pulled into Anchorage after 8 days, 2,300 miles driven, and 4 days on a ferry. After all the talk of ferries, inside passages, and seamen, it makes me want to visit somewhere else completely different. Regina sounds nice.